This is the iPhone 7, and it was released back in 2016. Now back then, this was a very controversial iPhone, because of an interesting design choice, which we will come back to why in a second here. But that was about 9 years ago, which brings us the question, is it actually worth buying the iPhone 7 nearly a decade after its release? I almost just want to say yes right away, as it was super cheap, but as always, let's start with the design. The iPhone 7 has a sleek aluminum back and curved edges, and even though it doesn't have glass like modern phones, it still feels premium, super lightweight, and is super comfortable to hold. You don't however get wireless charging, but it's fine since wireless charging isn't very efficient anyways. As for durability, I have been rocking this phone without a case for about a month, and it seems to be doing just fine, with just minimal damage and scratches. Now in terms of display, you're getting a 4.7-inch Retina IPS LCD display, and some people might say that a 4.7-inch display is too small, but in my opinion, it's just alright. You see, on this display you can reach every part of the screen quite easily. Yeah, it's not the best for enjoying videos or movies, but for overall day-to-day tasks and just doom scrolling, it's alright. And it kinda feels a bit relaxing stepping away from the big screens for a while. The screen also has 3D touch. It might not seem like that big of a deal, but for me it is. You see, on modern iPhones that use haptic touch, you can long press to do something, like bringing up these simple quick action menus. However, on phones with 3D touch like the iPhone 7, you have to press with force on the screen to make that happen, and the harder you press, the faster the action happens. But this is an almost decade-old phone, so the display has some downsides. One of them is that it's an LCD display, which isn't as vibrant or colorful as XDR OLED displays on newer iPhones. Here's a side-by-side comparison between the screen on the iPhone 7 and the screen on the iPhone 15 Pro, which by the way is an XDR OLED display. And one example of colors being off is the color black. The black on the iPhone 7 is not really black, but more like gray. The second issue got to be the brightness, because it maxes out just at 625 nits. In real life, that means that when you're out and about and finally touching some grass, the screen would be a bit difficult to view, and in full sunlight, it would be nearly impossible. Now, like any other older iPhone, this one has a home button, with a bit of an added controversy. You see, this was the first iPhone to get a home button that doesn't physically click. Instead, it's more like a pressure-sensitive button.
And this pressure-sensitive button feels kinda weird, because when you click on it, it kinda feels like clicking from the back, but you're not. So in my opinion, the clicky buttons on the iPhone 6 and the 6S are better.
But even though this phone was released in 2016, the home button still does its job very well. It's super quick, and there's absolutely no lag or whatsoever with the home button. However, switching the home button for a pressure-sensitive non-moving button was only part of the overall controversy. The bigger issue for most people was that Apple removed the headphone jack. By today's standards, that seems totally normal, but back in 2016, it caused a lot of backlash. Wireless headphones weren't really a thing yet. And of course, Apple did remove the headphone jack so they could sell the more expensive AirPods, which was also released alongside the iPhone 7. Now, this phone also has KSI forehead-sized bezels, a 7-megapixel selfie camera, and a single 12-megapixel camera on the back. And the cameras genuinely surprised me. The single rear camera takes some incredible pictures in good lighting. It has good colors and a solid dynamic range. The photos also look very soft and natural. Obviously, it's not as good as newer iPhones here compared to the iPhone 15 Pro in good lighting, since the iPhone 7 lacks the modern processing power and has a much smaller camera sensor. Now, since the camera sensor is small, there's no night mode, so the difference in low light photos between the iPhone 7 and any newer iPhone is pretty dramatic. Anyway, since the iPhone 7 only has a single rear camera, it only offers digital zoom. In other words, it can't zoom in that much, and the image won't look great. Here are some pictures I took with the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 15 Pro for comparison, both at maximum zoom. You also don't get portrait mode, because that was introduced a bit later with the iPhone 7 Plus, which had two cameras. The rear camera on the iPhone 7, however, can film up to 4K at 30 FPS. and the footage looks good for an almost decade-old phone. The camera does also have optical image stabilization and electronic image stabilization, which makes the footage look way smoother. Now let's talk about the 7-megapixel selfie camera on the front. I don't usually take selfies, but I did for this video, and the pictures taken with the iPhone 7's front camera are acceptable in good lighting. My face appears fairly sharp and the colors are very natural looking, though the skin tones can seem a bit flat or muted, and the camera really struggles in mixed or low lighting conditions. All in all, it's a decent selfie camera, maybe a bit bad in 2025. So as for the design, it feels outdated in just about every way, but at the same time, it's not, because you have the iPhone SE 2 and 3 with almost the exact same features. Anyways, for the tech nerds out there, hardware wise this phone has an A10 chip, 2GB of RAM and a maximum storage option of just 256GB. You also get a 1960 mAh battery, which we will come to in a bit. With all this hardware, this phone does perform quite alright. It's very snappy and fast for a phone released in 2016. I can use social media, browse the web, play games, call and text without any issues whatsoever. But there are of course some downsides. You see, the iPhone 7 can only run the iOS 15 software, which was released back in 2021, and because of that, you can only download older versions of many apps. You also have to deal with using older and much worse software, and in the age of AI, you don't really get any type of AI features, unless you count Siri, which is
the biggest piece of dog shit.
And you can't even download ChatGPT or Gemini because it requires newer software. Now, one of the biggest downsides with this phone is that it will get super hot after simultaneous use, or just by using it in the sun, which isn't good for the battery. Speaking of the battery, the iPhone 7 has, as I said earlier, a 1960 mAh battery. Now for today's standards, that's nothing, and that shows in day-to-day tasks. My iPhone 7 has 82% battery health, which is alright. In my experience, I can say that this phone lasts about a day or so, but I have to be careful and use it a bit less than I normally would. Even so, this is extremely good for an almost decade-old phone. I keep saying almost decade-old, but as of when I'm filming this video, it's almost 9 years old. Before wrapping up the video, I just want to mention how similar this phone is to the iPhone 8. Design-wise, they're nearly identical, except the iPhone 8 has a glass back and supports wireless charging. The battery, the cameras, the home button, the screen, basically everything else is the same. The only real difference is the chipset, which lets the iPhone 8 run the newer iOS 16, giving you more features, and both phones cost around the same too, so that's one thing to think about before buying the iPhone 7. If you want to know more about the iPhone 8, the video will be the first link in the description below. Anyways, is it actually worth buying the iPhone 7 in 2025 or 2026? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and say yes, because although this is an old phone, it could be used as a backup phone or as a kid's phone, and you can get it for really cheap. I got mine for about $35, which honestly is unreal and is an absolute steal for the money. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.